I know it's a bit of a difficult one to start you off with, but the last couple of days the Northern Territory elders put out an appeal to unwind the intervention with Rosalie Kunos and all of the other people on it, and came out by Australians Are Concerned. And one of the items in that was the income management cost. Now I know Labor supported that and supported a lot of the aspects of the intervention, and you weren't there, so not holding you, neither was Patrick, neither was everything there. But what's the view at the moment within the Labor Party about doing something about income management, the cashless debit card, which is the bastard son of income management, and some of those particular things which seem to stigmatise Aboriginal communities by assuming that people on welfare are not really people like the rest of us and have to have their cash managed?
Thanks, Eva. That is a hard question, and there's a couple of strands to that. For those of you that don't know, I am the Shadow Minister for Human Services. So my responsibility is around Centrelink payments, Medicare, family payments, youth allowance, and that kind of sphere. The opposite to me is a minister called Alan Tudge, whom I'm very proud to say has not had a promotion since I got there. So I'm taking credit for that. And the senior minister is Christian Porter, who I think has ice in his veins, not blood. And anyway, I better not go there. So what Eva's asked about is income management, but can I just explain, because it's really confusing at the moment. There are two things. One is the Northern Territory intervention and income management, and that is that people who were on Centrelink payments in the Northern Territory automatically were income managed by way of a basics card. So hold on to that. There is a second thing that keeps getting confused, which Eva has highlighted, and it's called the cashless debit card. And that is the Twiggy Forest aspiration. And there are currently 2 communities that are on the cashless debit card. They are Kununurra in Western Australia and Ceduna in South Australia. The government has just announced one more site, I think.
Yes, one more, but I can't remember.
It's in Western Australia somewhere. No, it's not. I think they want to do it in Bundaberg.
They haven't actually announced it.
Well, that's their intention. So there's 2 separate things, but both of them end up being the same thing, where you lose control of your capacity to manage your own money. The intervention was on the back of, and Labor supported it, was on the back of the Little Children Are Sacred report, and it was supposed to deal with pornography, child abuse, alcohol abuse and drug abuse in communities. I don't believe it's done any of those things. The position of Labor, and you'll forgive me if I'm very careful here, Eva, is being discussed now. We started out by saying there are now Aboriginal people in the caucus, and I'll just sit that up there. We have been very clear, and we had enormous pressure 2 weeks ago to expand the cashless debit card. Enormous pressure. And I have to give it to Jenny Macklin. She just said no to Forrest and others. Labor will not be supporting the rollout of a cashless debit card, and that's our policy. So They are supposedly doing an evaluation which was due a month ago, and obviously we'll be waiting for that. In terms of the intervention, that's much more complicated, and there is history there, and all I can say right now, it's going to take a bit longer to unpack that history. But you can be rest assured that the Indigenous members and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander caucus is very respected within the party.
Okay. Just hang on to that.
Thanks very much, Linda. Jim McElroy is my name. I just wanted you to comment on the way to deal with the question of the changing Australia Day, which is become a big debate at the moment.
Right.
I just want to mention an example which to me was extremely successful of how to handle this issue, which was the Fremantle City Council. Now, what they did, of course, a lot of Australians see Australia Day as a big holiday. It's a public holiday and they just want to booze up. Well, fair enough. They don't necessarily see it as a patriotic experience at all, a barbecue. But, so, to deal with that and win a wide support, Fremantle Council just changed the day. They had it just so happened that this is last year. They were the first of the councils.
They did it very sensibly, though. They did it very sensibly.
Yeah, and they just put a huge party on the Saturday, the 28th, with the John Butler Trio and a whole lot of bands, and they had a fantastic, massive day and won enormous community support. So I think if we're going to deal with this, because we don't have an alternative day, I don't think January 1 is, which has been suggested, is practical. Everyone's got a massive hangover on that, at that time.
Well, speak for yourself.
I'll speak for myself. We don't have Republic Day yet. We don't have anything like that.
I think I've got it.
We can move it that way and have a way of dealing with the situation.
Okay, so the fundamental question is, what do we do with Australia Day? You in this room and I understand exactly what the 26th of January represents. And it does not represent, as some fools have said, the establishment of the Australia that we know today. I find that so effing insulting. To say that somehow or rather, 26th of January, which was, Australia Day has moved around, I'm told, several times. I don't remember it being anything other than the 26th of January. Others might. But the 26th of January was chosen whenever for a particular reason, and it represents the beginning of the invasion. That's what it represents. But being the pragmatist and the diplomat that I am, my personal view is that, and I have been very upfront with this, is that the 26th of January is not the appropriate day that brings all Australians together. It's just not. And I don't think that we're going to see the 26th of January being turned into something else for a long time. I think it will remain Australia Day. That's okay, fine. But one of the great things, and it's been through the efforts of people like yourselves in lots of different ways, is the 26th of January, just think what it was like 20 years ago. It's not like that today. The first thing that happens in Australia on the 26th, on Invasion Day, on Survival Day, is the Wagan Magul ceremony, which is the cleansing, healing ceremony, which is now at Barangaroo. I love Barangaroo, not the suburb, I love her, the woman. And then throughout the day, you go to citizenship stuff, and it's, you know, there's lots of respect to Aboriginal Australia. The various committees all have Aboriginal representation. And the great thing that happens in Sydney is, of course, Yarbin.
Yeah.
And who goes to Yarbin? Look at that, we all go to Yarbin. And that is just magnificent. So we've got, on the one hand, Australia Day changing in its nature for some of us, but not for everyone. And I don't know whether you can all shoot me if you, no, don't shoot. You can all, actually,
criticize.
if you want to shoot me. I did that thing with Andrew Bolt, bless him. And one of the things I did with Andrew Bolt for that ABC documentary is I took him to Wagga the year that Jessica Marboy stood on the top of the Harbour Bridge and sang in Eora, Advance Australia Flag. It was amazing, and that fool still thought it was, ridiculous. But anyway, I've lost my train of thought. Australia Day. But my personal view is, as I said before, is that we should have a public holiday that is a public holiday to celebrate blackfellas and to celebrate our shared history. That's what we should have. I am advancing that day, but I don't care when it is really, but the obvious day is the second Friday in July, because that is always NAIDOC Day. Always. Second Friday in July. And NAIDOC Day, thank you, and NAIDOC Week has taken on an amazing prominence in the Australian cultural calendar. I mean, schools, local government, parliaments. So things have changed. I mean, in the New South Wales Parliament, there is the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags displayed permanently in both chambers. That didn't come about because of some magic. And in this New South Wales and the Australian Parliament, the federal Parliament, every day the Speaker acknowledges country. And that's important. That stuff's really important. So I think we've got a lot to be very proud of in this space. But is the 26th of January the right day for Australia Day? No. Of course it's not.
No.
You're first, apparently.
Yep.
Apparently.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for coming, even though you get under the weather.
I'm thinking you're at 5 a.m. when I'm having a coffee.
Narandra, place I know actually quite well. I think those regional areas get passed over, and I think it's appalling to have them remain with those terrible names. Why not do what you would suggest with, my question is, why not do what you would suggest with the plaques, that you contextualise what happened, but you change the name that's there. It's not, I don't want to drive over a creek that says, what was it?
Murdering Island.
Murdering Island? So you could have it quite prominent.
Previously known as.
Well, that's true, and I think it was Stephen Hagan that suggested there should be a national audit. But I just don't know how practical that is, or how pragmatic it is, or how possible it is.
It's how important.
Sure, it's very important, but you would have to. I think local government has an incredibly important role to play here, and it's local government business.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many of you have driven over the Tempe Bridge recently, but it welcomes us to Gadigal country. In the town that I grew up, which was the tiniest backwater town, there is a big sign saying, I can't believe it, you are in Wiradjuri country. You know, it's in Witten. And that town made my life very difficult. And those things are really, really amazing. So we shouldn't think it's all bad, because it's not. But I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think it's up to local governments in consultation with their constituents on how they manage this stuff. I really do. And that is a good job for local government.
Your name?
Lynn, just to correct the record, Humphrey McQueen did an article for the Labor History Journal on October the 28th in Canberra at a speech last year where he pointed out that for the first 20 years or so, I think it was January the 23rd at the Botany Bay landing rather than January the 26th that was celebrated.
Well, you would know, I don't know, but I'm sure
No,
you're
well,
right.
I'm just pointing that out, and that paper, that talk he gave up online through the Canberra History Society, and he was specifically addressing the other plebiscites, the anti-war ones, where Australia voted 100 years ago last year and this December 7th against conscription in World War I,
Right.
including 45% of the soldiers on the Western Front, and the one coming up in December 7th this year. It's interesting the Labor Party said nothing about it last year, and Albo didn't even answer my correspondence when I organised an event.
I
But
can't
let's not
answer for
go
Albo.
there.
What's your
He's the Daily
question?
Telegraph pin-up man. My question relates to this book in a sense. It seems to me that when you say that the only indice that the Aboriginals have met under the criterion was tertiary education, and it doesn't meet the other ones related to deaths in custody or children in detention, health, education and all those things, is exactly what this book is about. The Business Council of Australia wants to pick out the successful Aboriginals, turn them into successful individuals within Australian society in order to break down the community of Aboriginal solidarity, to move away from the ATSIC model and towards a Jawoon model and the Noel Pearson model, where enterprise and Aboriginal initiative will get rewarded. Now, how that was reflected in the media a fortnight ago was the 99-year leases at Melville Island, where private land ownership. Okay. Well, my fucking question is the black movement being white-anted, yes or no, by the Business Council of Australia?
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether the black movement's being white-handed by the Business Council of Australia, but I can tell you no one's white-handing me, brother.
The Labor Party sold out the black votes before.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, all I'm saying now, and I love your passion and thank you very much for it. All I'm saying now is that I would not be a member of this party if I didn't think we're heading in the right way. I could have sat comfortably for the rest of my career as Deputy Leader of the Labor Party in New South Wales and maybe one day Deputy Premier. I chose not to do that, as some people know here. I took a chance and I went federal. I had the right to return to New South Wales if I lost, and I waived that right because I took the view that if I lost federally, then I don't have no sweet spot back in the New South Wales Parliament. I think you are absolutely correct in terms of the Business Council and the way in which deals are done, not taking the perspective of Aboriginal Australia and not understanding the importance of country. One of the great things today, I only heard it on the news tonight, is that a native title claim was determined up on the north coast of Australia around Yamba, and for the first time 200 metres out to sea. That is history. And that is history. So you are absolutely right to be wary. And I can tell you...
Flogging off of land when you were in government in New South Wales and Gloucester.
That's okay. But
millions of dollars worth of land was flogged off.
No, but I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that, you know, I don't disbelieve what you're saying, but I'm trying to put across the point that I'm not being bought off by no one. That's all I'm saying.
John Clowes, I'm a recently retired school teacher. Linda, I just want to...
How recent, John?
April.
Oh gosh. How are you coping? Have you got a great garden?
I have no alarm. I wake up when the right thing is happening, and it's wonderful. After 40 years,
Well, with all that time
have
up
to be
your sleeve,
routine.
you can come and paint my bedroom if you want.
I just imagine for a moment, you know, the Bill Shorten Labor government comes into power and you're appointed as Minister for Education.
Oh! Yeah.
Where would you
You've got the
start?
St George Teachers Association here.
Where would you start to do things that would help? Because everything you see is just so sad, really, and you think, well, there must be an answer, but it's just not obvious.
Where would you start with education?
Well, I'm not planning to be Minister for Education, but what I want to sort out is can I just answer that in two ways, and this is really serious. And the rumour is that the election's going to come early, we'll have it looking about March, which makes sense to me. Is that if I retain my present portfolio, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You know, we've been asked to put up our policies and how much they're going to cost. The one policy that I'm putting up that will cost nothing, and people that know my track record will understand this, is lifting the morale of people working in Centrelink by believing in them and by giving them some flexibility. They've got none at the moment. And the second thing I want to do is change the discourse in this country about people that need to rely from time to time in their life on welfare benefits. That's what I want to do. I think, you know, this whole crap about housos and dole bludgers makes my blood boil, because people do not choose to be unemployed. People do not choose to have sick and disabled and relatives where they have to become carers, and a lot of those carers are young kids that never get a chance to finish school, and people don't choose those things. I mean, the next onslaught from this government on Centrelink people are going to be on people on age pensions. At the moment, if you apply for an age pension, which is your right, you've worked your guts out all your life, you've paid taxes, they're taking up to 9 to 12 months to process your, and they ask you the question, how much money you've got in the bank. If you've got more than 13,000 bucks, they run down your bank account. You have to run down your bank account before you can get the benefit. And that's just wrong. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to change. If I'm in education, our policy will remain as it has been, as you know, and that is needs-based funding. I mean, the government knows that they have ripped off public education. They've also capped now, you probably know, I know you know this, they have capped Commonwealth funding, 80% for private schools, 20% for public. That's capped. And I think that's one of the things we need to re-examine. But clearly the notion that $22 billion less for schools in Australia is something the Labor Party will continue to pursue, and that's what I would do as well.
We will demo one next Friday morning outside Channel 7 over from the
I'll announce it later. Okay.
over that very issue.
Who'd like to
Okay.
ask another question or comment? Over here, Claudia.
Outside Channel 7 Today Show. Sunrise, they're the ones who are...
Yeah, my name is Claudio from FILEF, the Federation of Italian Migrant Workers. About the issue of Aboriginal incarceration, which is obviously one of the most horrible things happening, what could be the alternative ways? I mean, I'm sure there have been studies and solutions that have been thought of to jail.
I think that's a great question, and we shouldn't think that there's nothing happening in this space. The really awful thing is that all of you in this room will remember 87, 88 with the Death in Custody Royal Commission. None of it's been properly implemented, and the level of incarceration has just continued to increase. In our state, where we live, in the juvenile justice system, 52% of boys locked up are black kids. And that's what we hear about. But do you know what the percentage is for Aboriginal girls? For girls? 80%. It's because there's less girls. There's less girls locked up. So the percentage jumps. And in Northern Australia, where the Royal Commission's taking place, it's 100%. In the Kimberley, right across the top. But the thing that's scary, everyone, is the kids that are being removed are also 99% Aboriginal. And it's a goddamn train wreck. So that's why we want to make it a higher priority than what it is at the moment. In fact, I think when you think about it, when you juxtapose yourself into a place like Kununurra or Wyndham or, you know, Arakoon, what would you feel as a parent or a grandparent? Understanding that the life chances for your grandson or your daughter is jail. And it's got to a point, and it's also the same thing in a lot of our Western Division country towns, where black kids think that part of the rite of passage, what's normal, is getting beaten or going to jail. You know, that's when you really break it down from government, when you look at communities, and you know, people in this room know that, you know that. So I'm sorry I got a bit emotional about that, but it just is very difficult. Thank you. But to answer your question very quickly, there are some very positive things happening, including justice reinvestment, which is happening in Burke and in Cowra, which is about, instead of custodial sentences, ways in which young people can serve out their misdemeanours in constructive, community-oriented ways. But you know what the problem is the bail laws. I mean, there is someone locked up in Northern Territory for his life for murder when he wasn't actually at the murder. And it's the bail laws that are the problem. So it seems to me that that's where we could be focusing much more. In New South Wales, most Aboriginal people are locked up for 6 months or less, because of driving, because of lack of registration, because of accumulated fines. There's got to be a better way to deal with it.
What could be the other way?
Home detention, community service orders, justice reinvestment. They're the things that we need to be looking at.
Driver training.
And community services in the first place. Make 2 more questions.
Yeah. Yep. We knock off at 8:15, but if you want to...
No, I'm fine.
Any more comments or questions? Maybe we're finished.
Sorry, could you
Yes.
clarify whether the age pensions, it was 13,000 or 30,000 that they wanted to reduce savings to?
Say that again.
Centrelink, did they want to, I just want to clarify.
13.
13,000. Yeah.
How many people?
Doesn't go far.
13, but how many people survive?
Well, but the really shitty bit about that is that you know, people have saved, which is their, you know, if you die, it's going to cost you $7,000, $8,000 to have a decent funeral. And instead of essentially recognising that people may have $20,000 or $30,000 saved, they are delaying things to the point where you run your savings down, so you've got no safety net if something terrible happens. That's what's going on. That's what they're doing.
Okay, any more questions or comments? There we go.
Oh, don't be depressed.
We're good. No, let him in.
Hello, Linda and Deborah. I've just been so inspired by your positive hope. And I loved your idea of this alternate day on the back of the beginning or the end of NAIDOC week. And I ask you if you have a name for it, because once you name it, it will exist.
No.
We need a name. So is it going to be...
Any ideas?
Is it going to be the First People's Day, or have you got an Aboriginal name that we could call it?
Oh, wow, what a good idea.
Once you've got
Let's
a name,
workshop it.
it will exist.
We'll have a focus group.
Okay.
I believe in the power of language, and if you create
Actually, that's a really good point. And
Yeah.
you know what? No, I don't.
we'll perhaps canvass it amongst the Aboriginal people and get a name. Doesn't matter what it is, but once it's out there and it's in print and it's happening, it will happen. They'll have songs about it. It will happen. You got to have it. You know, like it's got a unified name, and we'll all get behind it.
How about Uluru Day?
So,
Uluru Day.
whatever. No, because then it's a place. I like the First People's name, the day, but
First People's Day. It's got to be something that includes all Australia.
yes. No, it's your day. It is the First People's Day. We join in and celebrate you, but the identity is about, it's separate from the Australian.
No, I get it. Yep.
Okay.
We'll work on it.
Yeah, thank you for your positive
And the
energy.
Tino song Anthem, which has the line, "Don't sing me about your anthem when you don't know the
Jefferson
second
is
verse."
Okay.
Anything else?
Any more comments or questions? Okay. Let's wind it up here by thanking Linda Burney really warmly.